now live streaming service.
Yep, we are good to go. I believe we're up on all three. Perfect. Hello, and welcome to your SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm your host, G.Stryker. With me is Steeler Nation writer and contributor, Zach Moore. Zach, good to finally have you on the show. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Good to finally be here. It's been a long time coming. I've written a couple articles, but thank you so much for having me on the show.
Not a problem, man. Not a problem. I know we've been trying to get you on, and a couple times we had some issues in the past, just in coordination, but I'm glad it all worked out for this week. And of course, your attendance today had to be mandatory because today we will be discussing mandatory minicamp. Meow. My cat is really into mandatory minicamp for some reason. I don't know why. But today, big news, obviously, is like we've got to figure out as Steeler fans who's not at mandatory minicamp. And number one being Stephon Tuitt is missing mandatory minicamp. And I at least know I wrote an article on this last week. His brother was hit and killed, struck by a hit and run driver in the Atlanta area. I assume he is down with his family taking care of that. Because that would be right around the time the funeral would have to occur. So our hearts and love go to the Tuitt family and also to the family. My gosh, I know his brother had a different last name and right now it's escaping me, but our hearts go out to your extended family, Stephon Tuitt, and take all the time you need to get back. We know you're going to be there when you do. So, yeah. Was there anyone else that you heard, Zach, that is missed and has not shown up to mandatory minicamp?
Does not show. I don't think anybody else has not shown up. If they were, they probably would have reported it, but I haven't seen any reports on it really.
Good. Well, that's one good thing. And another interesting report that just came out among the writers and everyone else is that we've been discussing this on the GroupMe chat. Mike Tomlin had a couple things to say about the injuries. So, Zach, why don't you run point and tell Steeler Nation what is going on with the injuries with the Steelers and how is Mike Tomlin addressing them?
Yeah, so there's this story that was posted about an hour ago on 93.7 The Fan, their website. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty much just detailing, apparently during practice, they were doing a couple drills and specific players like Juju and Ben Roethlisberger pretty much just left the field. And so reporters after, this article is just pointing out reporters after the fact.
Yeah.
They asked Mike Tomlin, just like, hey, like what happened? And in perfect Mike Tomlin fashion, he gave them an answer without giving them a real answer. And I mean, just the first the first quote was pretty much just about the injuries, if there were any injuries today. The quote, Mike, were there any injuries that were concerning to you today? Tomlin's response was, none concerning, none whatsoever.
Perfect answer.
Yes. I mean, and then it later goes on to say, another question was, looked like there may have been something that happened with Ben there at the end. Can you walk us through maybe what happened during that 2-minute drill? And then Tomlin's answer was just, quote, I won't. So.
Sometimes we have to really appreciate having Mike Tomlin as a coach and his succinctness and at least scuttling a lot of these stories that these reporters want to run with before their actual stories. So I appreciate that, Coach Tomlin. One thing I will note that Coach Tomlin did state, and that is about the readiness of the COVID situation within the locker room. He states that the Steelers are tops in the league for vaccination rate among players. They even had some of their players actually being vaccinated today. So kudos to the UPMC and to the Steelers for running point, showing the league how to deal with this situation. Unfortunately, it hit them when everybody else started playing them, having the issues last season, not having the same type of stringent policies that the UPMC and the Steelers have put in place to make sure that it was safe as possible for the Pittsburgh players to complete the season last year, in which they did. But the Ratbirds, they always carry some kind of disease, and they got us once, and the Titans carried one. Who knows why they... But, it's just the worst. San Fran, I guess, had some problems too, but it's the nature of the beast. This year, fortunately, the COVID rate much higher across the nation. It looks like all of the fans are going to be back in the stands. And I, for one, Zach, can't wait to get back in the stands. Are you going to see any games this year?
So my plan is, I mean, I just moved here first week of May, and I pretty much my plan is to go to the Detroit Lions game. That it's a preseason game
Uh-huh.
here in Pittsburgh, and like you can
Nice.
get tickets for that for like $20-30.
Yep.
And that's like on my budget right now. That's kind of what I like.
Well, that's perfect, man. That's the way you get in, and that's how you start off when you're a Steeler fan, and just getting the system. I paid my dues for many a year before I finally got my seasons, and if I got an extra game, I'll let you know too. I'll bring you along to one then, Zach. But yeah, I can't wait to get back in the seats because I opted out last season because of COVID.
Yeah, and also for me, I just graduated from Penn State, and I missed out on a whole entire season of going to Beaver Stadium for those games.
Yeah.
And I mean, just it was graduation week. They sent out like a little notice. They were like, "Hey, next semester we're going to be in person. Can't wait to get your season tickets to Beaver Stadium." And I'm like, "Well, I'm graduating, so that doesn't help me out at all. Like, I'm not going to go to those games. I'm not a student anymore." But I mean, now that I have the Steelers, maybe it's a little bit better football. Let's hope.
I know, and I just can't. It's time for Steeler fans too to get back to some kind of normalcy because this has just been such an interesting year that it's just been tough to digest. And really, like it was like watching football under glass last season, not being able to be there. I mean, still having games, but so it was like a season, but it really kind of wasn't too. But at least, I think the NFL was the only league that didn't contract their season. They played a full season. Everybody else shortened their seasons. NBA, NHL, MLB. Who knows what happened with soccer? I don't follow that. But but at least with football, the football that matters in this country, they played their full season. They had a good time, and it was still a good season other than Tom Brady winning another Super Bowl. That was the only thing that I really couldn't stand about the year. But going back at least to minicamp, I heard a couple things. One of the most interesting things that I heard in the quips that or the quibbits that came out today was from Edmonds, our starting safety. He didn't get a fifth-year option. He was asked about that, and he stated that even though he didn't get the fifth-year option, it doesn't mean that he won't be back next year. So I like that type of mentality out of Edmonds because it could be seen as a slight not getting that fifth-year option, whereas we obviously gave the option to Fitzpatrick. I mean, that's a no-brainer. There's no way you're letting that guy hit open free agency anytime soon. But I understand the value, at least I think, is what the Steelers were thinking. Is Edmonds is a very good safety, but Edmonds can be had probably for less than what it would be to sign him to the fifth-year option. What are your thoughts on the worth of Edmonds and how he fits in this situation, Zach?
Well, particularly for him, I mean, if he's going to play the strong safety spot, and then you have Fitzpatrick playing that free safety spot, he kind of brings a different dynamic. Because with Fitzpatrick, you got pretty much a straight ball hawk, somebody who can go all the way across the field and kind of cover as much area as possible. Where Terrell Edmonds is more strength and power, and he'll come up and he'll make a lot of tackles for you. So I think with that dynamic, I think they'll be pretty good in that dynamic. Now, it all just comes down to, especially for a lot of people, not just Edmonds in general, just comes down to the number. What's that contract number going to be? And because, I mean, on the open market, you could probably get a strong safety just as good as him, maybe for less. It just depends on what he's going to get. And I don't know what that fifth-year option number was going to be, but if it was, say, like in the tens millions of dollars, I would say, yeah, see ya. Or even like 7.5, I would say, no, thank you. Just because he just doesn't warrant that amount of money. And especially with the Steelers cap situation, they need to save a little bit of money.
And well, the one good thing about the cap next year, I think there are like 100 and some underneath the cap as we sit today for next year, which is the complete opposite of what happened the previous year. Just trying to find a way to get underneath of the cap, which they did a fantastic job. And I still think that they're around like 7 mil under now that they've signed all of their rookies except for Kendrick Green. I believe Kendrick Green is still unsigned. I don't know if he was in camp today. that was something that I don't know. If anyone else knows about that, Steeler Nation, if you want to chime in on the chat, let me know too. Because that's just the only thing, because since he's not rostered, technically it would not be mandatory for Kendrick Green to show up. But obviously for a player that the Steelers really have high hopes for him possibly becoming our next starting center, I think he needs as much time as possible to start getting used to this system.
Yeah,
Brian, nice. Sorry, what's that, Zach?
I said they need help on that offensive line after losing some of those players.
Yeah, I agree. And Brian, thank you very much too, chiming in over there on YouTube. Mr. Brian Brown saying he was there. So it sounds like Kendrick Green is there, even though I don't think he signed his contract yet. He's there without his contract. I don't understand how that works, because it's a slotted contract. It's like, hey, here's a sheet of paper. Put your name on it. Bop, 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 done. All right, go play football. All right, they'll figure it out here soon. But at least he's there. If you're right there, Brian, that's a good point. And that's at least, we all hope that he can get in there and get, knock BJ Finney off of the starting blocks, in my opinion. So another person was interviewed today. That was the 2-time should have been Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt, asked about not winning the Defensive Player of the Year. He said strictly when asked about not winning it, that he doesn't think about it. Instead, he thinks about all of the plays that he left on the field, and he will be trying even harder this year to make more plays. What does that say about the caliber of player to you, Zach?
I mean, that's good. I mean, if he actually means it, if he's being truthful and he's not just saying like a good quote to get somebody to like not ask him that type of question anymore. I mean, obviously there's financial incentives for winning a Defensive Player of the Year, but I don't think he's struggling with money. But I mean, even still, for him to say that he could have said, the system's rigged against me. Like, I mean, Aaron Donald, like he could have said something about Aaron Donald or something like that. I mean, in my opinion, it could have gone either way. TJ Watt could have won. He led the league in sacks, so that's always a good marker for Defensive Player of the Year. But I mean, and then what did he say exactly? What was that first part that he said?
He stated that he doesn't think about not winning the Defensive Player of the Year. He instead thinks about all the plays he left on the field.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, especially down the stretch later in the year when they went 1-5.
Yeah.
That playoff game against the Browns. I mean, he obviously, he, as a defensive player, it's not really your fault if a team wins or loses.
Yeah.
But you still have an impact, and he definitely has a huge impact on that defense. But, I mean, as to say you left a couple on the field is a pretty good gosh darn thing to say, to leave a couple on the field when you still lead the league in sacks. So.
Exactly. And tackles for loss and quarterback pressures. I mean, the guy's an absolute monster. And I'll tell you, in my opinion, yes, that of course he's going to say it doesn't matter that he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year until he's sitting around the table at Thanksgiving and he's got a 3-time DPOY candidate across the table from him saying, hey, how's that Defensive Player of the Year thing coming along for you? And that's the only time he's going to think about it. And shut up and throw some mashed potatoes at each other across the table. Hey, you take that. Yeah. But we obviously the trump card in that situation that TJ Watt will be able to play hopefully someday soon if he wins the Super Bowl, because all he has to say to his brother is Super Bowl champion, man. And that's the trump card. Because DPOYs are great, but championships are forever, man. Everybody remembers those.
Absolutely. I mean, he's going to have to do a whole lot more. He might have to get 30 sacks for them to win the Super Bowl this year. Might have to raise it up a little bit of level.
He's got an extra game, so maybe with that 17 games, he can hopefully break the 30 mark. So we'll see how it goes this season.
Yeah, and just a quick point on that 17-game schedule. I mean, I wonder what that's going to do. I mean, if they're going to keep it for multiple seasons, and if they do, what is that going to do to the NFL record book?
Yes.
For like offensive and defensive stats. Like, are they going to have a whole other section of the rule book be like, this was played during a 17-game seven or an asterisk or something like that?
Yeah, unfortunately not, because this is also what happened when they went from 12 to 16 or 12 to 14 and 14 to 16. Mm-hmm. They don't rewrite the rule books. It just creates a situation where breaking yearly records are going to happen more often because you have an extra game to play them in. So which is a little bit exciting as a fan. It's like, oh, now my player is that's why he's the best ever. And it's like, dude, did you ever see Jim Brown? No, nobody ever saw Jim Brown. What are you talking about? He played in black and white. No, that's like this kind of stuff that's going to be going on. And yeah, I mean, and it's the 17 games is mandatory. That is an official change. I mean, they've never gone backwards in the NFL. The NFL is pushing for 18. They've always been pushing for 18. They kind of just tipped the league here through COVID to get 17 on. So I expect 18 to be popping through here pretty soon. Sorry about the analogy there.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
So one thing, Steeler Nation, I'm gonna cheers to you here. I'm drinking an interesting beer here. It's called Pickle Town. It's collaboration beer. I was just working down in North Carolina. Deep River Brewing and R&R Brewing made a dill pickle lager, and I got it from my buddy Jeremy, who's the brewer over at Hook Hand Brewing in Williamston, North Carolina. Little hole in the wall, awesome place. He does excellent ciders. He does excellent brews, and then he also gets beers in that he doesn't like, so he adds like different ingredients to them to make them really good. Like he got this one lager that was just plain. He's like, I'm gonna suck some stuff out of it and put some like lemon in there and make it decent. And it was excellent. Yeah, so check that out.
Does it taste like pickles?
Yes, it does. It tastes like you're sipping on slightly brewed brine, pickle brine. It's if it was like I can't do the what is it called, butter pickles or sweet and sour the sweet pickles. Yeah. I don't like butter pickles at all, but I love dill pickles, and this is very dilly.
Wow. Well, while you're drinking that, I'm drinking this 60-ounce thing of water.
Yeah, I do my water first thing in the morning. Now it's beer time. It's after 5. But cheers to you, Steeler Nation. Thanks for being part of the podcast. Also, got any questions, please chime in on Twitter, chime in on YouTube, chime in on Facebook. We've got a couple things going on about the wide receivers that you brought to my attention also, Zach, stating with PFF ranking the top 32 wide receivers in the league, and none of them were Pittsburgh Steelers. So how does that hit you personally? I can tell for me personally, I think that list is bullshit if there's no Steeler in a top 32.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to start off right off the bat, I'm looking at number 23. Now, as I have noticed, as becoming a part of Steeler Nation, if I put something in the group me or the group chat or something like that, and I'm like, yeah, PFF this or PFF that, they're like, oh, PFF. And disrespecting Ben Roethlisberger. So they just completely discredit it.
Yeah.
They say that it does have a Pittsburgh Steelers bias, which true. Especially on the offensive side, it could be true, but defensively, they definitely give them their props.
Yeah, well, on their metrics, though, they do have certain metrics that are pro Steelers, the one being Deontay Johnson being number 1 in the league on separation out of breaks, and that's been over 2 years, where he gets more separation off of a break out of anyone in the league. So that alone, to me, should have put him in the top 32 on their list with that metric. But since he's not on this list, I mean, I'm rolling through it right now. I do like that A.J. Brown is above Antonio Brown, though. Antonio Brown is listed at 24 here on this list.
Yeah, I mean, they do have the interesting one that I'm looking at right now is Cole Beasley at number 23 and right above Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
And Devontae Parker, who I think Devontae Parker is really, really good for the especially since now he has Tua. I really look for him to, and I mean, even on that field, they have other great receivers there, like Mike Gesicki, a great tight end right there.
Right.
His amount of touches and amount of passes that he's going to catch are probably going to go down, but I still think he's a really good athletic wide receiver. And so, but I mean, if they are basing this list off of what Juju did last year, he had 90-something receptions, like 830 yards and 9 touchdowns. Like,
yeah, I mean,
not a terrible season, but for Juju, obviously not the greatest performance, but
it's better than a bunch of people on this list.
Yes, like looking at Deebo Samuel and Tyler Boyd at the bottom of the list, I think Juju could be slotted in above them. I mean, you can make a case that Chase Claypool could even be on this list because they do have
That's
some
true.
second-year players on this list. Like I think the Justin Jefferson's 10th on this list, right below his teammate Adam Thielen. And I don't know, with second-year players, it's a weird dilemma that you have because you have these players. They have a really good season, but then the season after, like they have a really bad season. And now is it the quarterback's fault? Is it because they had a really great offensive coordinator that nobody figured out? Anything kind of like the effect that happened with the Baltimore Ravens a couple years ago, where they led the league in rushing, broke every record there, and then the season after they came back down to earth. So I wonder if the same thing will happen with Justin Jefferson, and if Pro Football Focus is just way overvaluing him.
Well, now that we've discussed at least the top 32 wide receivers in the NFL, Pittsburgh or PFF also did the top wide receiver cores in all of the NFL. And even though Steelers don't have anybody in the top 32, they managed to find their way into PFF's top 18. So let's talk about the receiver core. One thing that I at least preface before going into this is that the Steelers core, the Steelers receivers are young. They're young as crap. I mean, this is a young core of receivers. I mean, I'm trying to think who the oldest guy is now. Probably it's because I think it's Claypool's young, Juju's young, DJ's young. I think DJ's actually older than Juju, even though Juju came in the league a year earlier. I think Ray might be the oldest one in the room.
Maybe it could be either him or
Washington.
Well, I was going to say Eric Ebron, but he's not a wide receiver.
Well, I'll give you that because technically he kind of is. He's not really a tight end either.
He doesn't block that much, really.
That's a good call. So we'll say Eric Ebron's the oldest wide receiver in the room. But discounting his attendance even in the Steelers receiving core, PFF is like, yeah, you're 18th. What do you think about that?
It's interesting because obviously they do include the tight end position.
Oh, they did. Good.
Yeah, they included Eric Ebron and newly drafted Pat Freiermuth as well.
Perfect.
He's kind of got to prove it. He's gonna kind of work in. I do wonder what kind of formation packages they'll have out there. If they'll have a 2 tight end set and have them like neither of them just block, just go out to pass.
Yeah.
And straight have 5 offensive linemen. Like I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see this upcoming season.
Me too.
In terms of where they were ranked, I mean, it is obviously like sort of kind of middle of the pack. And I think really if you put Juju on another team, or if you even put Chase Claypool on another team where they're going to get the majority of the targets, I feel like they're 2 really athletic and really physical players. Whereas if you throw them into traffic, I feel like they can catch, and especially with Chase Claypool. Some of those plays that he made on the sideline last year with those toe tap catches were just insane. Yeah. And I feel as though Ben Roethlisberger, now I might get kicked out of Steeler Nation for saying this, but maybe Ben Roethlisberger might not be the greatest quarterback to ever live. And maybe that might have some effect on how well Juju did, especially Ben coming off a Tommy John surgery. So
no, that's a Ben Roethlisberger surgery. Tommy John's only had one ligament to deal with. Ben had 3 of them that had to be reattached.
Yeah, he's I don't know.
That's insane.
Longer than Tom Brady will. I don't think he'll be 43 or anytime soon.
I think Tom Brady will still be playing after Ben retires next year. That's what it's going to come down to.
Oh yeah.
But one other thing I at least point out to make on this list, Cincinnati Bengals ranked number 12 on this list. Browns are 13th. Steelers are at 18, and the
Ravens.
Up there's the they're the Purple Birds. They're down at 22. And that, for them, that's a mixture of not being able to either draft receivers or not having a quarterback that can throw the receivers a catchable ball.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's one of the problems with having a list like this, especially with a wide receiver, because your job is dependent on who your quarterback is. Because if you don't have a quarterback, like if you have, like, that's what I was interested about with the Vikings. I was like, their quarterback's not like this all-time talent or anything, but still the receivers are putting up great numbers. And so maybe that's just a factor of just getting fed the ball, or
Yeah.
maybe it's just a factor of maybe the quarterback's better than I thought. And especially with the Ravens, maybe they're just saying Lamar Jackson is a great runner, but when it comes to throwing the deep ball, especially, we saw it last year in the playoffs. I mean, good Lord. Good Lord. He had some duffs
Yeah.
back last year.
So now, since you already mentioned this just previously about, maybe Ben's not the greatest quarterback to live, honestly, I'd agree with that. I think he's a great quarterback. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback, not the best ever, but PFF also ranked the quarterbacks in the NFL, like you pointed out to me. And Big Ben came in number 16, dead center of the rankings for the top 32 quarterbacks. How do you see that? Is that over or underrated for you?
I mean, I'm not sure if that is. I think my problem with this is they kind of disrespected some of the other players. Now, once again, this is Pro Football Focus, and I don't know if it's more so of saying like you're projecting next year and how well
Yeah.
they'll. And I don't know what Ben Roethlisberger is going to look like a full off season, a 17-game season
Mm-hmm.
with Juju Smith-Schuster really coming into his own and Chase Claypool coming into his second year. And then with all the other receivers that they have as well, with the new rookies that they have. I don't know what their receiving core is going to look like. I would assume it's got to be maybe, in my opinion, probably top 15 in the league, definitely in that top half. But Ben Roethlisberger, I feel as though if the receivers can stay healthy, especially if he can stay healthy, I would say this is pretty much just a good ranking. I would say pretty much my only problem is will he be able to stay healthy? And then also the players that are underneath him. I mean, he's above Kyler Murray.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
There's some real good players. Joe Burrow, Ryan
Joe Burrow, that's another thing.
Dan
I mean,
Jones, another Trevor Lawrence. I mean, well, he's a rookie though, obviously.
yeah,
Garoppolo,
they have rookies down lower, a lot lower on this list, and you just can't really say that. But I just think that Ben Roethlisberger at this point in his career, I'm not talking about 5 years ago, not talking about 3 years ago. At this point in his career, I don't think he's the best quarterback in his division. I think it's right neck and neck between Joe Burrow. Now we do have to see what Joe Burrow is going to look like coming off of that really bad injury.
Yeah.
I mean, when he was playing last year, he was playing well.
Great. Yeah, he was doing a really great job. And let's just quickly touch on the players above him. Like Kirk Cousins, I could see him doing better than Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. This is kind of like right in his range. Ryan Tannehill also being there, and Matt Stafford and Baker Mayfield. So 10 to 16 to me can be like, those are interchangeable. I think those quarterbacks are all kind of in that, and even Matt Ryan, if you wanted to extend one more spot. But then you have Lamar Jackson, who just won the MVP, 2 years ago. Dak Prescott, Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Pat Mahomes. I mean, arguably the top 10 is going to be a tough group to break, especially for a 38-year-old quarterback trying to have one last ride into the sunset and hopefully ending with number 7 for the Steelers. But I mean, as much as I hate PFF, as much as I hate how they rank, I mean, I think I'm with you. I think that it's fairly accurate going into this season, just trying to figure out who's going to fit in where. And one other point that I want to make that I just think is just really funny about this list is it says for number 24 will be Jameis Winston / Taysom Hill. It doesn't matter who it is. Just New Orleans Saints. That's 24. Whoever quarterback it, they don't even know what quarterback it is, but James Winston / Taysom Hill is better than Justin Fields in the Bears, better than Jared Goff at Detroit Lions, better than Cam Newton in New England, Sam Darnold at the Panthers, Tua over in Miami, Zach Wilson with the Jets, Hurts over at the Eagles, or Drew Lock finishing last. Wow, Drew Lock finishing last. Now, this is something that Steeler fans remember going into that game, how the media is like, oh, Steelers got to face that new upcoming quarterback, Drew Lock. Drew Lock's going to be doing a great job. And he actually did play it. No, actually, he played a crappy game. He got hurt early, and then the other guy came in and did good. But the from going from all that promise down to the worst rated quarterback going into this season, that's pretty rough for Drew Lock. But that is just an interesting way that they bottomed out the bottom aspect of those quarterbacks.
Yeah, that is a weird one, especially because he does have Cortland Sutton there on the outside to help him out. But another one right below the Jameis Winston one, which I thought was funny, is Justin Fields, because there was a quote that Matt Nagy put out today when asked about who their starting quarterback was, and he said Andy Dalton.
Yeah, they're about the same. That could actually say Justin Fields / Andy Dalton probably in that same slot, to tell you the truth.
I don't know what they're doing up there in Chicago. It's too cold. They can't think straight.
Oh shit. Yeah, they they know. They know, and they're passionate fans, and man, they haven't been happy since 1985. So, I guess we got to also talk about TJ Watt and his contract options. I know he declined to talk about that today during the presser. What do you think, at least as far as his future is looking like here in Pittsburgh, Zach?
So this is an interesting one to me, because if I were the Steelers, I would probably, if I'm talking from the Steelers' perspective, I would say they should probably do, if he asked for 125 million, I think that the Steelers give it to him. If it's a 4 or 5 year deal,
Yeah,
I think they should give it to him. He's been relatively healthy throughout his career. Like, there's not really too many injury history with him, especially.
Yeah.
Unlike his brother. And also his performance is unmatched. You can make the case that he should have won Defensive Player of the Year multiple times.
Yep.
And it's just, with the Steelers' perspective, he should pretty much just give them a blank check and be like, all right, I'll take this amount per year, this amount in guarantees. Like, I think he's going to get a monster contract, but that is different from what I would, in my humble opinion, what I would do. I think one of the best things for a lot of these players is to let them hit the open market, see what they're going to get, maybe do like a little Dak Prescott situation where you pretty much wait until the last minute. And I think they overpaid for him. I think they should have let him hit free agency. I don't think he would have gotten what he got, especially with the Dallas Cowboys. But I think the same thing could apply with TJ Watt. I think you let him hit free agency. He's on his 5th year option right now. They're not paying him anything at all. He's probably going to be the highest paid edge defender in the NFL. From everything that I know, he loves the city of Pittsburgh. He's definitely built a home here, especially with his brother on the team too, being one of, if not the highest paid fullbacks in the league. So maybe TJ Watt could take a pay cut and get a little bit of an allowance from his brother to make up those lost earnings if he really has to. But I think overall, he probably should try and hit the open market. If the Steelers want to give him that amount of money, I wouldn't fault them for it. But I just think with these kind of players, the top of the line, the best thing to do is probably just let them hit the open market, see what other people are paying. And if you lose him, it's a really, really big loss. But I mean, their defensive line is starting to get old. It's looking time to start rebuilding. And now if you want to let go one of those other players, such as Cam Hayward, who's still a really good player, but he's starting to get up there in age, maybe you do a trade, get rid of some of that money and re-sign him for that big deal and keep him in Pittsburgh for a long time. But I think it comes down to what they want to do and what price point they're willing to pay. And I think from the Steelers' perspective, they're willing to pay a whole lot of money.
They definitely are. And the only thing that I would disagree with is that if I was the Steelers, and at least I've been following them for a long time, I think there's zero chance of Watt hitting free agency. If he hits free agency, he's gone. There's no way the Steelers are going to get him. There's no way the Steelers are going to retain him. He's going to be the highest paid athlete in football.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing to me, though. Like, I understand what you're saying also about wanting to get a little bit of a discount on a player like this. And how you do that is you sign with the team, or you sign an extension this season before you become a free agent to get slightly less than market value. I mean, to me, 25 million is a steal for this kid over the next 5 years. The guy has already showed that he's the tops in the league at his craft. And, I don't see anywhere else the Steelers grabbing a guy that's going to get them close to 20 sacks a season, even with the extra game. So that's number one. Number two, also, there's no way they're trading Hayward. He's a team leader. They gave him the extension. He's retiring a Steeler. To it, I consider Hayward never. But
Yeah, I was just saying
good
like
points.
a big other defensive player who has a big contract. Just try and free up that cash. Because I mean, I could see them paying him $30 million, TJ Watt. I could see that.
I could too. I could too. And I honestly, I'm hoping that it is closer to 25. If it's somewhere in between, it's a win. Anything under 30, to tell you the truth, is a win for TJ Watt, because he is going to be the leader of this defense. He sets the tone. He makes the plays. And the whole defense is better because he is on the field. And it makes everybody else better too. So those are the types of players that you pay because of that. One other person I wanted to talk about, Le'Veon Bell. I love talking about Le'Veon Bell because I'm such a German heritage that I so love the Schadenfreude about the Le'Veon Bell tweeting, "I am never playing for Andy Reid again." And then he was asked later about that, said he shouldn't have said it, but he didn't take it back. Now you have Le'Veon Bell, biting the hand that fed him in Pittsburgh by sitting out for a year for one of the greatest coaches in the NFL, Mike Tomlin. Then going to greener pastures, both in Jersey, more so in Jersey color than actually dollar bills, because they didn't actually pay him his full amount, which is even better. And I get to laugh a little bit more about that. But then going to Kansas freaking City, playing for another Hall of Fame quarterback in Andy Reid, who just took his team to a Super Bowl championship the previous year and took you to the Super Bowl for the ride this year when you really didn't even have to be the guy, but stated, "I'm never playing for Andy Reid again." That to me shows you that the problem with Le'Veon Bell is Le'Veon Bell. He was one of the best in the league. He was at the time second only in yardage per game to Jim Brown when he was making the Steelers offense go right around 125 yards a game. And ever since then, he's had a rough time of it. I mean, you could argue that the Jets didn't utilize him the best. Obviously, his quarterback situation didn't help him out there as well. But to state that Andy Reid is a problem, come on, man. I just cannot get by that. I cannot get behind it. I cannot abide by it. That's sour grapes, Le'Veon Bell. And the reason why you're not a success is because the Honey Badger also came out and said that he is the type of player that blames others for his own lack of success. What do you think about this, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, this whole Le'Veon Bell saga, even going back towards the Steelers, I remember it happening, watching it play out over social media. And I was like, why is he going to sit out a full year? Because at that point, he had already been injured. He wasn't the same player anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was at all going to get the kind of offers that he thought. He wanted to be the highest paid running back in the league.
Yeah.
And I just didn't think that any team would give that to him. And I mean, the Jets gave him a deal that was worth less than what he was hoping to get, and he still took it. Yeah. And he went there, and we know how that situation kind of turned out. Didn't have a quarterback really, didn't really have an offensive line even remotely close to what the Steelers had given him in years past. And I just think at this point in his career, he's kind of saying this stuff, especially publicly saying this. Like, what are you doing? What's going on? Why do you have to say this? What?
He's getting some pub for his new rap album to drop. I think that's there's no such thing as bad press in that situation. You never know.
He'll put out a diss track against Andy Reid or something like that.
Oh my gosh.
He's got to go to the Patriots, and then after that be like, I would never play again for Bill Belichick. He's one of the worst coaches in league history. And then I think at that point he's done. He's just got to go team to team to really good coach to really good coach, and kind of just screw up his career. I don't know what to say about Le'Veon Bell other than he was at one point in time pretty much, it was between him and Adrian Peterson as like the best running back in the league.
Yeah.
Years and years ago. But I mean, with the suspensions for marijuana and then also for just injuries and stuff like that just piled up.
Yeah.
he really fell off really fast. And I feel as though now he's trying to, I don't know if he's trying to, but it definitely feels like he's making excuses
Yeah.
for other people either holding him back or which I can, on some levels, I can agree with that in Kansas City, especially last year. He didn't really get a lot of playing time, but I mean, they picked Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round, and so they have to give him a lot of playing time because he's going to be their future at that running back position. Really, he played really well, and I mean, once the signing happened, I was like, oh, this is not good. They're going to have two running backs in the backfield that are they're absolute monsters. Because up until that point, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was playing really well, and I thought Le'Veon Bell would play a bunch of games with him too. But maybe it was something in the locker room. Maybe it was something at practice. I don't know why he didn't get a lot of playing time.
Yeah, that's just what it comes down to at times. But I'll at least give you this tidbit here, Le'Veon Bell. Get ready to add this to your next track. I'm best in the league. I'm telling you, Kelly, my yardage be bigger than Andy Reid's belly. Take that to the bank. There you go, buddy. And now we have the last thing I wanted to talk about is you wrote a nice article here at SteelerNation.com discussing Bush, obviously getting injured last season. Tell Steeler Nation what needs to happen with his game and what you see being the most impactful things that the Steelers need out of the defense with him contributing next year.
Yeah, I mean, I put this article up, what was it, Sunday or something
Sunday.
like that?
Yeah.
14th, yeah. And pretty much my kind of message in the article was there's definitely two things that Devin Bush needs to do, because while we know that in terms of linebackers, he's not the number one, but he's for sure the number two in that linebacker room. He has to really step up. Up to this point in his career, his rookie season, he was absolutely phenomenal. And then kind of after that, he got injured, and always with really athletic defensive players, especially with an ACL injury.
Yeah.
You got to wonder what they're going to look like when they come back. And part of the really, really good aspect to Devin Bush was his athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
And so kind of what I kind of did a thought experiment in this is, what does he need to do in order to bounce back and have a really good season? And first thing I thought of was obviously his health. We've talked about it earlier before, but 17 game schedule, I don't know what any of these players are going to look like, especially the ones coming off injury. What are the COVID protocols going to look like this year with all these players getting vaccinated and all these states opening back up? Are these players going to be able to get back into a regular training schedule? They're going to be able to rehab. Like, what's that going to look like inside of the locker room and even outside of the locker room if they want to go to a private gym or something like that to get some work done to help recover? That was the big thing to me.
Yeah. Mainly
regarding his health. But then obviously the other thing, and I wrote this in my article, not a hot take, but his production. And I almost did write like a prediction for like how many tackles he would have, but in this season, I can't. I wrote down like he should have like 125 tackles, and if he doesn't get that, then he's like a bum or something. But I was like, no, you can't predict that, especially in this upcoming season with him coming off an injury. And then also with TJ Watt, who, as we talked about before, is basically playing for a contract. We do talk about him. He's going to be the highest paid player. But if he has a season where he has 4 or 5 sacks this season, and then you have Devin Bush having like multiple interceptions and multiple double-digit tackle games or something like that, and he really goes off, then maybe they say, TJ Watt, $30 million, we can't do it. We really like this Devin Bush guy.
Yeah.
And I don't think there will be an issue with that, with Devin Bush and TJ Watt. But I do think that Devin Bush absolutely needs to have a really good, solid season, because on that defensive side of the ball, especially when it comes to pass catching, I mean, not pass catching, but pass defense. It's pretty much him, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Joe Hayden. Those are the 3 players who I would look at on that defensive side of the ball that really need to lock in and really need to really lock down those defenses. Because, I mean, you're going against Odell Beckham, you're going against Jarvis Landry, you're going against some really good receivers. Even with the Bengals, Jamar Chase coming in this as a rookie with Joe Burrow, their connection is going to be really, really good. So he's going to have to be able to line up against a wide receiver, and his ACL better be like made out of metal or something, because those guys could just turn on a dime and get you and break your ankles,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
And so I think those were kind of the two main points that I was talking about in my article. He's got to stay healthy,
Yep.
and he has to perform well.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it's not groundbreaking that those are the two big takeaways that I had, but I mean, it's just reality.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he really needs to work on anything else other than staying healthy, especially in a 17-game season.
Mhm.
And the thing I will be looking out for is what he's going to be in preseason. If they're even going to play him at all, if they're going to sit him, if he's gonna beg. Because I mean, other articles have been put out that he wants to play 100% of the snaps this upcoming season.
No, yeah. Well,
And
he is the guy that is supposed to be in on third down when they go to one inside linebacker. I mean, I understand that, and that's what Timmons did when he was with us. He was just about in on every snap when he was in the league. Yeah, that's a good point.
and if he wants to do 100% of the snaps, he's going to have to probably not play any preseason games and just rehab. Make sure just keep practicing every day to make sure that ACL is good to go in the upcoming season. And my prediction is I think he'll play about 90% of the snaps, but I think there might be some first or second downs where they just won't put him out. Like if it's early on in a game, like if it's not in the fourth quarter or something like that, they'll just say, "Hey, man, we're running this specific package because they have two tight ends and one running back and one receiver or something like that. So you don't need to be out there." And I think you have to do that, especially as the Steelers early on in their schedule when they start playing those out of division games. But once he's going to want to play those divisional games, he's going to want to line up against Jarvis Landry. Like I pointed out in my article, somebody asked him if he was going to be able to cover Jarvis Landry, and he pretty much just said yes.
Yeah.
And I mean that's going to be the big thing for him, just being part of that pass defense and kind of just trying to stay healthy and trying to put up numbers.
Sorry, my cat just wants to go all over my camera right now. I've got a giant cat, as you can see here on YouTube. I apologize for her and her. Anytime you talk about Joe Burrow, she gets really excited. She's a Bengals fan, as you can tell. She's a striped cat. She always gives me shit when the Bengals do well against the Steelers, just like my dog gives me shit when my brown dog gives me shit when the Browns do well against the Steelers. So I have to live in this household with these two animals that do nothing but berate me every time they play against the division rivals. But thank you very much for that insight. Excellent article. Steeler Nation, go over to SteelerNation.com and click on the article by Zach Moore here to read up on the exact details for Devin Bush and what it means to him coming back here to the Steelers this season for their success. Now it's time for us to take questions from Steeler Nation. So this is the time when people over in the football forum at SteelerNation.com are the first to ask questions. Everyone else across social media can put up their questions now. I will get to them in kind. First question coming in from Lidos. Hey, Stryker, give me a couple of artisanal beer recommendations. I'm visiting my cousins in Miami and getting the COVID vaccine. Excelente, Lidos. That's great. Let me know of a couple of can't miss beers so I can try and find them around here. My favorite brewery in Florida, I think they're in Tampa, though, but they're distributed everywhere. They're called Cigar City. I don't think I've had a bad beer from Cigar City. Everything I've tried, from the excellent Hefeweizens, excellent hazy IPAs, excellent brown ale. Their brown ale is spot on, too. I was really surprised about that. But they make really, really well-crafted beers. You should have no problem. They come in cans. Any place they sell beer there in Miami, you should be able to find Cigar City. Grab that. The only place I was at in Miami area was a place called Schnebley's, and it's a little west. It's a little outside of town heading toward the Everglades, but it's a beautiful property. It's a winery brewery. Their beers kind of like weren't the greatest. Their wine was better, but the property is gorgeous. It's a nice place to hang out, have a drink, relax. They got like a tiki bar. They got a nice, like, beautiful water thing going through and waterfalls, and it's just a beautiful place to go. So take the family over to Schnebley's if you can get over there and just have a good time for relax, have a drink, have a bite to eat. I think they do some barbecue and stuff there too. Do you know of any craft beers you want to add there for Miami? I'm not sure if you're a craft beer drinker at all, Zach. I'm just starting to meet you here on the podcast.
Well, if there's a craft beer, I'm pretty much down for any kind of craft beer. I'm more of a whiskey fan myself. I really love whiskey.
Wonderful. Me too.
But in terms of knowledge, I really got none. I'm only 22 years old, so I pretty much only have 1 year of experience drinking. But
that you pretty much 1 year. That's a good answer, Zach. That. Take that one to the bank. Next question coming in from Coolie Man. I'm going to direct this to you because I refuse to answer this question. Zach, what do you think of Loudermilk?
Oh, am I going to get in trouble if I don't know what Loudermilk is?
Loudermilk was the defensive player who was drafted. He's the defensive end. I think he was drafted in the 5th round. We traded back up into the 5th round to draft him. And he's a defensive end, and he's kind of like, the draft scouts and the Butler stated that he translates, his skill set translates very well to a young Cameron Hayward.
Oh, Isaiah Loudermilk.
Isaiah Loudermilk, yes.
Oh, well, I feel I was not ready for this. I did not do any research on this young fellow. I'm sorry.
No worries. This is questions from Steeler Nation. I always give them a hard time, and I always obtusely avoid answering questions about Loudermilk because I immediately answered it during the draft, and then they just kept asking me, so I stopped answering. So next question on the list, if I can find my sheets. What do you think of the rookies after seeing a bit of them working out in shorts? Unfortunately, I didn't get to see too many of them working out in shorts, but nothing but excellent things coming in about our number 1 draft pick, Najee Harris. I mean, and also, I want to shout out to over here on YouTube to Brian Brown. He was all over Najee Harris, and glad that we have him over Le'Veon Bell as well. So the guy is just he's an overachiever. He's working himself to the limits in practice, almost like an Adrian Peterson type running back. The guy has no limit to his endurance and no limit to the amount of time he's willing to put in to try to be one of the best. And that is what you love to hear about investing into a 1st-round draft pick, is that somebody just wants to not only be the best that he can be, but try to make everybody around him as good as they can be. And by him working so hard, it's going to be an easier transition for him to become the starting running back this season.
Yeah, I definitely think he has a little bit of PTSD from Alabama and Nick Saban. So he's like, I gotta work. Otherwise,
right.
they come yell at me.
Good call. Other than that, I haven't heard a whole lot of chatter about anybody. Freiermuth, we've heard a lot about his versatility. Green, we're just trying to get him in. I know I don't think he did the OTAs, but now we're told that he's here in mandatory minicamp, which is good. Another one that you hear a little bit about is Presley Harvin III, and that's the punter. He's just going to be the story of training camp. As soon as everything starts up, everybody's going to be all about Presley Harvin and his girthy figure with his tremendous leg. So I can't wait to see him out there kicking. He's my sweetheart this season, honestly, for training camp coming up. So can't wait to see him get in there and kicking some ass. Next question was, what is your prediction of the starting offensive line week 1? Zach, do you have an opinion on this, or do you want me to go in?
Oh, I had a tab open about their offensive line. Let me see it right here. Right. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously with them losing Villanueva in the offseason to free agency,
and Pouncey,
kind of lose one of their leaders on that offensive line. But
yeah,
I mean, just looking at kind of offensive line rankings, this is once again, according to Pro Football Focus, they're more towards the bottom of the list, and I do think they're ranked 29th on the one that I'm looking at right now. But I mean, the thing
which is accurate for the way that they finished last year. I think we were 31st in rushing last season.
Yeah, no, rushing last season. But that's also due to the fact that you have early on in that season you had injuries, and then also with James Conner I mean, James Conner, I don't know if if his bones work anymore because he keeps getting injured over and over and over again.
Yeah, I feel badly for him.
You have to be able to, especially, I mean, just that offense, the running back, the offensive line, and the quarterback, they're not, in my humble opinion, they're not at the top of the division. And I think that really, really hurts them. Hurts especially what they want to do with play calling, with that new offensive coordinator. I think you're gonna have to do as much as you can with Ben Roethlisberger to try not to expose that offensive line because they got some good players on that offensive line. I mean, you have Zach Banner over at right tackle. He's not too shabby.
Mhm.
And I think the main thing, especially with Najee Harris, who isn't really like a super elusive, super speedy back. He's kind of a do-it-all back. He can catch it, but he can also run right in between the tackles through that A gap or that C gap,
Yeah.
and he can get downfield pretty fast. And so
Mhm.
I think the main thing for this offensive line is just trying to find a scheme that will really work for them. Find a way to get that running game started so that takes a little bit of pressure off Ben Roethlisberger. But in terms of the offensive line, I don't know what to expect from them. I do think that Najee Harris will absolutely help them out because if they have somebody break through that offensive line, you do have Najee Harris who is able to get past those bigger defenders. Maybe instead of being pushed backwards, he can push the pile forward. And I think that could in a tight game where they're looking to maybe get a wild card spot or something like that at the end of the year, that could be the difference between winning and losing a game on the goal line or something like that.
And for me, my prediction for the line left to right is going to be Chuk starting off at left tackle, Dotson definitely left guard, Finney. Unfortunately, he's probably going to start off as the center. I don't want him to, but he will. David Castro is a lock at right guard, and Zach Banner's a lock at right tackle. So that's what you're looking at most likely starting week one. I think the only flux position would be center. If Kendrick Green can flat out beat out BJ Finney in training camp, he's the only person I think that would have the ability to do it as a rookie with the lack of talent, veteran talent that's ahead of him, because the veterans that are ahead of him, none of them are actual starters. They're all spot starters. So can he do it? Yes. But right now, I think the edge is to BJ Finney until he can get unseated, hopefully sooner rather than later. Next question coming up comes from Blitz. Who is your prediction for that camp guy that everyone falls in love with, only to have the guy get cut and not get picked up by 31 other teams? I have an opinion on this. My opinion is going to be Shakur Brown, because everybody was talking about Shakur Brown. Should have been drafted. A lot of talent in college. Obviously, he had a big injury. Has a lot of talent. Probably going to be popping and making plays here in preseason. But then once we get to the round of cuts, I could see him getting cut, honestly. And then, who knows if he comes back on practice squad. But a guy like that should be on somebody's practice squad at least. Do you have any opinions, Zach? Or I know it's a little early to talk training camp, but at least I'm still up on this from the draft stuff.
I do have an answer, but I don't think it's a really good one.
Okay, let's hear.
I do think, and I'm only saying this because as a former Penn State snob and a
Yeah.
Lamont Wade, I don't know if he's still on the team or not, if he's on their practice squad or anything like that. I do know he got drafted. I do know he has a Spotify. He has some very interesting music on there. So maybe it's a theme with the Steelers. They just signed all the really good rap artists.
Yep. No, he is on the team. He is a safety, and he will be competing. He's rostered, and he's competing, and he will be competing in training camp, and he's at mandatory mini camp as we speak. So we are
Penn State.
There we go. Drink Iron City always finishes up the questions for us. First question: capabilities of Roche. Should he have to come in and be a starter, even if just a game or two? I don't think he has to be a starter personally. I think Highsmith is the starter. I would love to see Roche show more to me being that third offensive tackle on the field that we didn't have with Ola Ayadani and Tuzar Skipper, though I thought Highsmith did a hell of a job last year as the third offensive outside linebacker coming in to spell Watt and Dupree, and especially when Dupree went down, I thought he did a very good job being a rookie, being thrust into that starting position. He did as well as he could flying by the seat of his pants, in my opinion.
I agree. That outside linebacker position opposite of TJ Watt will be an interesting one to see because I mean you're losing Bud Dupree, a really good pass rusher, and with the formation that they like to put out, it'll be interesting to see who kind of moves up or down in that depth chart.
Yeah.
Before the start of the season, even going through preseason, there could be some changes or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody on the opposite side of TJ Watt gets moved up or down from that starting spot.
And moving to the next question, Zach, I really want to get your opinion on this one. Do you think Coach Tomlin will give running back Harris breathers along the way in a conservative manner, or do you think Coach Tomlin will follow his usual run him till the wheels fall off mentality?
I think early on, I mean, with the way that obviously as reported, Najee Harris is going throughout training camp and stuff like that, just going balls to the wall, going hard as hell.
Yeah.
I would think that he's probably going to push Coach Tomlin to really want to play, and he's going to probably try and compete with James Conner for that starting spot. And honestly, I think I would have to. I don't want to say a conservative manner because I think Tomlin wants him to play, but I just think that with Najee Harris and with James Conner, who's been there for multiple years, even when Le'Veon Bell was there, I think he's going to stick with James Conner and try and work in Najee Harris. I mean, you have a first-round pick. You're going to choose a running back that high in the draft, especially with the first-round pick. You have a lot of confidence in them. And he was, I believe he was the first running back taking in the draft as well. And so once you invest that much draft capital into somebody, you're going to want to see them play at some point, especially with all the stuff that's going on that we've heard throughout training camp and all that kind of stuff. You're going to want to see him play. And then on the flip side of that, James Conner, who has been there for multiple years, who's been there starting back. And now he hasn't always been healthy, but when he has been healthy, he's been relatively okay. Now, last year was literally they were the worst rushing team in the NFL. And Ben Roethlisberger being it's between him and Phillip Rivers. Well, now that Phillip Rivers is retired, but maybe Ben Roethlisberger is the least athletic quarterback in the NFL. So he doesn't help them much out with any type of option play that he might want to pull. So, I mean, I do think, to answer the question again, I think that they're going to try and work the two backs in, and then, but by the end of the season, I would expect Najee Harris to be the number one running back, but I could absolutely be proven wrong.
For me, I don't think it's going to be as much of a Tomlin situation this season, having the new offensive coordinator and Matt Canada being able to utilize players to their strengths and not square peg around holding players into situations where they may not succeed. You're going to see situations, I think, where, McFarland's going to be on the field, where, possibly Samuels, possibly Snell, whoever running back they take, there's going to be situations and packages specifically for these running backs because they do have a slightly different skill set, especially in the pass receiving aspect, than Najee Harris. But Najee Harris is the all-around workhorse back. But I don't see him getting run into the ground like we did with Bell, like we did with Willie Parker the year he broke his leg, like we did with Bettis. This is a different league. This is a different style of offensive coordinator, and I think he's going to utilize the talent around him better so that you might see a series maybe that, especially being a rookie, give him a series off. Especially each half. Yeah.
All those touches he got in college.
Right. So last question. There's one more question. Next question. The 53-man roster punter pick. Are you going with Percy Harvin or are you going with Jordan Berry, Zach?
I'm going to go with, I'm sorry, I didn't do too much research on the Pittsburgh Steelers punter.
See, I'll take you off of the off the spotlight here because I am a special teams nerd. I am built like a punter, which is why I always research the punters and kickers and holders extensively. So love Jordan Berry, always have. Love Aussie kickers. Love the Aussie kicker with a backwards roll. That's why he coffin kicks. That's why we don't get touchbacks, because we had Berry for so long. Sure, he doesn't have the leg that a lot of these players have, and he definitely does not have the leg of Percy Harvin III. Percy Harvin III has a monster leg to go with his monster girth. I don't know if you've seen this guy on the field yet, Zach. It looks like an offensive lineman out there punting.
Oh, yes, I have. Yes, I have. I know who you're talking about.
That's why I'm like, everybody's going to love this guy at training camp. He's got a big personality. He's a good kid. He's got a strong leg. And the thing that I honestly think he is going to beat out Berry, only because last year the Steelers were willing to let Berry walk to have Colquitt's son kick for us, where Colquitt's son did a horrible job when he was with us for a couple games. Was it Dustin? I think he had a couple games with us, and we were like, yeah, that Berry guy, we're going to bring him back. And Berry had a good year. So Steelers are already ready to move on from Berry. I think this is the time where the Steelers actually do move on from Berry. Percy Harvin III is my pick. So we'll see how it works out here in training camp. Last question. And what did I drop that window? Crike. We did. Yeah, I did. There it is. Last question. I think both Green and Moore will make noise in training camp. Will it be enough noise to achieve starter play? So Green being the center that we discussed. And like I said, it is up to Green to unseat two veterans that have a low bar for starting. Yes, he could. Dan Moore, no. Dan Moore is not going to unseat Chooks, playing in his natural left tackle position now. He's not going to unseat Banner, who is a freaking bulldozer. There's a reason why Steeler Nation cheered every time Zach Banner came out on the field as the extra tackle. And it was because he knocked players on their asses. And I can't wait for Zach Banner to get back on the field and show Steeler Nation again why we cheered for him when he comes back to take over the right tackle position that he rightfully deserves. And he's going to be kicking some ass at it this year. So Moore, no. Green, yes. So thanks a lot for your questions there, DIC, as always, because you always ask the most and have the most fun. He also adds, thank you guys for putting these together, and know you have a fan who appreciates them. So you are most welcome. Thank you, Steeler Nation. And we have another question here online from Brian Brown. Thank you so much for chiming in too, Brian. I've been reading everything as we've been going along, and I agree with you too. I love that Roche being one of the picks here in the draft, and I think he's a really disruptive player. I'm excited to see him because I love watching young, disruptive players when they enter training camp, like Joey Porter types, like the James Harrison types when they were young, just wild and making plays. I'm excited to see how he's going to work out. But Brian's question was, do you guys believe one of these defensive backs the Steelers have drafted within the last 2 years is going to step up? And I guess Pierre would be one of those players. And I think Pierre kind of has to step up. Oh gosh, who would be the other corners that I'm thinking of
that they drafted?
Yeah. Well, we drafted. I know we drafted Justin Lane. The other one. That's the other one I was trying to remember. Yeah, technically Pierre was undrafted, wasn't he? Yeah, I think he was undrafted, but I think Justin Lane was actually drafted. But yes, and Sutton. Sutton's obviously in his 5th year now, but he is going to be really impactful to how well their secondary really holds up, because with Nelson and Hilton leaving town, somebody has to step up. I mean, hell, I'm happy if it's an undrafted rookie free agent. Just as long as somebody steps up this year, it would be nice to have that. But yeah, I'd say, Justin Lane has a chance. Pierre has a chance. Yep. So that's all of the questions we have in here from Steeler Nation. Zach, thanks a ton for joining me on the show, man. And I love having a Penn State alum. I grew up a Penn State fan. I'm from the Williamsport area. So that wasn't too far from Happy Valley. We were more of an unhappy valley over in Muncie Valley, but it was a little happier if we went a little west.
I really do appreciate you having me on. It's always really fun to get to do this. I did a radio show at school for 4 years, and so being able to just literally just talk about sports and do all that kind of stuff, it's an honor and it's a privilege to be able to sit down with a fine professional like this.
Well, I'm the most unprofessional professional you'll ever meet, but my claim to fame is 20 hours of straight coverage for the draft. And I will still keep that feather in my hat if I ever meet any professional, quote unquote, professional newscaster. How many breaks did you get to take during the draft? Yeah. You're one of those guys. So, but tell Steeler Nation, Zach, we already know to read your articles over at SteelerNation.com. How do we follow you on social media?
Well, just on Twitter. I got to make sure I get these correct. On Twitter, it should just be Zach Moore Sports, all lowercase, ZACHMOORE. And then on Instagram, you can follow me there. It is just Zach Moore _sports. Same ZACHMOORE. I also have a Patreon. You don't have to subscribe or pay money to it, but I put all my articles up there, and I also have recorded a podcast episode that's up there as well. So if you want to help me out, help me pay my rent, you're welcome to.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zach, for being part of the show. We love having you. Steeler Nation, obviously follow Zach. I'll be putting those handles up also on SteelerNation.com. Zach, make sure to put those in the chat here so I can copy paste them and throw those over. And Steeler Nation. There we go. Steeler Nation. Thanks for following us at the SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. Be sure to read our great articles at SteelerNation.com. Tweet us at SteelerNation. Instagram us at SteelerNation.com. Follow the Steeler Nation podcast on Twitter at _SN podcast. And follow me, your host, on Twitter and Instagram at SN Striker. Striker is spelled with a Y. Thanks for joining us again on the SteelerNation.com podcast, sponsored by Total Sports Enterprises. I'm your host, G.Stryker, with Zach Moore rooting along with you. As always, go Steelers!